with y'all today. Again, if I haven't met you before, my name is Matt Alexander, and I'm part of the V3 staff team. And this webinar is sponsored by our V3 cohorts. I think we're going to have a graphic pop up for this. Our V3 cohorts, over the past 12 years, V3 has had over 500 people in the United States go through our cohorts. It's been incredible. This 9-month learning journey of coaching and training and camaraderie as people are starting missional communities, missional forms of faith community. And our next cohort will be starting in September 2025. And this is a great time if you're interested in learning more about the cohort, or go ahead and connecting with somebody who's a part of our team to hear more about that. We'd love to hear from you. And you can go to V3's website, which is the v3movement.org, to learn more about V3 and the cohort journey as a whole. You'll also, because you registered for this webinar, be getting an email with a replay of the webinar video, as well as a link to an interest form if you're interested in learning more about the V3 cohort that's going to be starting up later this fall. So this is sponsored by the V3 cohorts, and we'd love to connect with you more about that if that's something that you are discerning and considering in the season of life. We are really excited to have two women church planters from San Antonio, Texas. I'm in Waco, so this is like a real fun Texas kind of vibe we got going on here, for better or for worse, depending on your perspective on that, but it's what's happening. And Nancy Gaines and Terri Pease are in San Antonio, Texas, and they are both serve and plant and lead and disciple within the church, kind of the larger ecosystem of the Park Community Church in San Antonio. And they co-lead a neighborhood parish together. Now, they're going to share more about that and about themselves in a minute, but it's wonderful to have you, Nancy and Terri. Thanks for making the time to be here to share about your journey and your experience leading and planting in your neighborhood. It's really exciting. If you have a question, Nancy and Terri are going to share for the next 20, 25 minutes or so. But if you have a question that you'd like to ask them as they're sharing, if something comes up for you, you'd like to hear more about, or just to hear their thoughts or heart on, please drop it in the chat box. And I'm going to kind of be moderating the Q&A time after they share. And we may not be able to get to all the questions, but we'd love to hear what your questions are and to ask those towards the second half of our call. So if you have a question at any point, feel free to drop it in the chat box and I'll check it out, and then we'll ask them a little bit later on. So thank you again for being here. If you signed up and registered, we're grateful that you're here to learn alongside of us. And our topic today is being a woman church planter. What an extraordinarily important aspect of leadership in the church's culture, the missional culture that we're trying to create in our church planting efforts. And so thank you for being here, Nancy and Terri, to share about your journey with that. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to you.
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for inviting us. We're both just super excited to share with everyone our journey, the lessons that we've learned, why we believe that women have a vital role in church planting and pastoring missional communities. First, we feel like it's a little important to know some about us, just so you can understand our context and who we are. Nancy and I have been friends for almost 20 years. And about 5 years ago, I badgered she and her husband to move into our neighborhood, more just because I wanted to hang out with her more, not knowing what God had in store for us and what he envisioned for our neighborhood and for our role in that. So it's been really exciting. The last 5 years has been really fun. Nancy and I are really similar in a lot of ways, but we're also really different. So if you're familiar with the APEST, which is it's an assessment to help you discern your spiritual giftings. Nancy and I are both shepherds. So we really find our giftings to be walking alongside people and discerning their needs, caring for people. We both really identify as shepherds. But Nancy, her secondary gifting is an apostle, which means she's a really good leader to take charge, which I need because my secondary gifting is an evangelist. So I like to get people excited about things, but I'm not really good at executing them, whereas Nancy is. And so we really play off each other well in that area. If you're an Enneagram person, I'm an Enneagram 9, so I'm a peacemaker, and I feel like I'm really approachable and people feel comfortable around me. And people feel very comfortable around Nancy too, but she's an Enneagram 2. I would argue that she has a very strong 3-wing, but that's for another conversation. But she finds needs and jumps right in. And she looks for ways to serve others. And I feel like that's where her sweet spot is. And so that's a little bit about us and our personality. I'll let Nancy kind of talk more about just how we got started and a little bit more about our journey. So
Yeah, thanks, Terri. So like she said, super excited to be here. So I'll kind of start with our journey of how we got here. So about 15 years ago, Terri and myself, along with several others, we helped plant the Park Community Church here in San Antonio. And at first, we started as volunteer roles, as any beginning church plant is. It's all hands on deck all the time, regardless of who you are and your giftings. You just jump on board. And so we did that. And as time went on and our church began to grow a little bit, we then transitioned from these volunteer roles into a more bivocational staff role. And so in my position at the park, I lead our community formation team. And so that's anything to do with engaging communities, helping people get involved in communities, helping with, them just feeling like they are a part of the community and helping launch new initiatives. And Terri does kind of a slew of things, but we like to just put a little bow on it and say she does all of our administrative responsibilities, and she helps manage all of our park financials as well. And then she's also, I recruited her into the community formation team because we do work so well together. But on top of that, it's Terry's other thing that she does, which takes up a good chunk of her time. She's not only done the V3 cohort through this program, but she's also pursuing her master's degree. And she's doing that through Northern Seminary, and she's getting it in theology and mission. And so she has been a wealth of knowledge for so many of us. We like to say it's theology time with Terri because she is so approachable, and we just love to go to her and ask her questions. And she has it's been so formative for her, and just how she's able to relate to people on another level. So when we first started this, we were two missional community groups that came together, and we had deeply formational community experiences. We were probably in these individual groups separately for about 10 plus years. And we experienced a lot of life together. We went through, us getting from being single into married. We started having kids together, raising kids, and just really started navigating through life's transitions. And we, through all of those years of doing life together, we saw the impact of living alongside one another in a Christ-centered way, and just how meaningful and transformational that was. And then COVID happened. And it was just such a gut punch for so many people. And really, in response to the isolation that COVID caused, we really felt called as a church. And then Terri and I together, we felt called to step outside of the traditional church role. We were still working at the Park Community Church, and we were still trying to do as much as we could, like so many other churches, trying to spin up things to make sure that we were able to stay afloat and engage people. But really, we thought the way that we could bring the church into our community was launching our neighborhood parish. And so we call it, our neighborhood is called Oak Meadow. And so we launched the Oak Meadow Neighborhood Parish. And this community was focused on living into the scripture of loving your neighbor. And for us, we took that as loving our actual neighbors. And so in a time when people were very isolated, we wanted to bring people together. And the easiest way to do that were the people that were in our immediate circles. And so in our context, we live in San Antonio, Texas, and Texas is very like culturally familiar with Christianity, but a lot of times, people are often disengaged with the church. And so, what we wanted to do is we wanted to reimagine what it meant to be the church in everyday spaces. We have the sweetest little elementary school that sits at the foot of our neighborhood that deeply brings people together. We're like, okay, what does it mean to like be to live into like being involved in a school, being involved in our neighborhood, these places where we spend so much of our time and being the church in these places. And so we decided to call it a parish because the word parish means you're accepting the spiritual responsibility for a group of people. And we wholeheartedly committed to that. And when we were thinking through what would this look like in a neighborhood, we thought, number one, well, we're shepherds, and something that's very easy for us is hospitality. And so we wanted this invitation to be one of hospitality. And so we wanted it to be an expression of the church through this mission. And we got together, we had so many thoughts and ideas. And first of all, we thought we have to make a mission statement. We have to have an idea of what we want all of this to revolve around. And so our passions combined, as well as meeting the needs of our community, we wrote this. And I want to share it with you guys because I do think it's helpful as you're launching things to just have an idea of what you're doing. So our Oak Meadow Parish mission statement is: the Oak Meadow Neighborhood Parish seeks to follow the commands of Jesus, of loving our neighbors as ourselves through hospitality without an agenda, service to meet the physical needs of those around us, and peacemaking to unify people across faith, political spectrums, age, and race. Our hope is that our neighbors will come to know Jesus and that we will work together to serve and glorify him. And so I'm going to toss it over to Terri now, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about what our parish looks like.
Yeah. So Nancy and I started out doing this by ourselves together, and it was awesome, but it was a lot of work. And we started out hosting 2 parish meals a month. And what that meant is we would provide the food. So the Park Community Church would pay for food, and we would send out a wide cast invitation to anybody and everybody in our neighborhood to show up. And they didn't have to bring anything. We just wanted them to come. And we had a very overwhelming response because this was in 2021 when we started. So it was still close enough to COVID that we tried to do everything outside. And we would have people come with their kids, and people would come who they were Catholic, they were Jewish, they were no faith, they were, Baptist, whatever, it didn't matter. We had a lot of people come from all different faith backgrounds or no faith background. And they couldn't believe, like, we were very clear in our invitation that this was a church that was paying for this meal, but there were no strings attached. And people couldn't believe it because honestly, a lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of times in our context, there's always a bait and switch. It's like, we're going to invite you to this, and then we want you to come to our church this weekend, or we want you to do this. And there's never just come and be with people and be in community. And that's what Nancy and I wanted to do. And so we started hosting this twice a month. We would rotate our houses. We would rotate, we helped each other, but it was a lot of work. And sometimes we have 50 to 75 people show up. And that's including children. That's a lot of people. And so it was starting to really be hard for us. And Nancy and I were getting burned out. And so we enlisted a core team. And these were people who were coming. They live in our neighborhood. They come every week. Or every time we have one, they offer to help. They are really engaging in conversation. They understood the mission of what we were trying to do. And so we enlisted them. We were like, look, we want you to help lead this with us. And after doing that, that has been invaluable. And I would tell any church planner, you have to have a team to do it with, to bear this burden with you, because if not, you will burn out very quickly. Even Nancy and I, who had such a passion for it, it was very hard to do because it's just a lot of work because you're living life on top of it, And so we enlisted this core team. And so then the core team also helped us with food. We switched to one of their houses because they live in a cul-de-sac. So that allowed the kids a safe place to play. And it made more sense. Sometimes we host our meals at our neighborhood pool, and anybody who's at the pool, we invite to come eat with us, even if they had no idea what was happening. We are very intentional that we don't have programming at our neighborhood at these parish dinners. So we don't have liturgy. We don't, sometimes we'll pray over the meal. It just depends on how chaotic it is. Our core team prays ahead of time. We pray over the food. We pray over the people coming. We pray for fruitful conversations with people, but we don't have liturgy at our events. But our core team and Nancy and I, we are very intentional about the conversations that we're having with people. We pray for opportunities to have spiritual conversations or to take next steps or say, hey, let's go grab coffee and talk about something. On top of that, we also, our neighborhood is a very social neighborhood. We have festivals, and we, like Nancy said, we have an elementary school in our neighborhood. And so it's already a very social group of people. And so as a core team, we have taken the responsibility to participate in whatever the neighborhood's already doing. So for example, we have a neighborhood swim team. Nancy volunteers with the neighborhood swim team. Our kids participated. My kids are too old now, but Nancy's kids participate in the neighborhood swim team. We have a festival. We have a cleanup day this Saturday, and we're going to go and help clean up the neighborhood. Like, we are taking ownership of this neighborhood in a way that is hands-on and has nothing to do with our parish, but we feel responsibility for this neighborhood. We care about the things our neighbors care about. And so if someone reaches out to us and says, I have adopted a refugee family and they have nothing, and we're trying to outfit their apartment, can y'all help? We will absolutely put that need out to our big group chat, and people pitch in and they do things. So we really, really try to support our neighbors and what they care about. This is not about getting people into our church doors. This is about getting people to understand church in a different way, understand the body of Christ in a different way. And so at Easter, we'll have a parish dinner in a couple of weeks before Easter, and we'll hand out little cards of a lot of different church services that are happening, of churches that we know and trust, so that people, if they do want to go to church, they have options. They can look into it and say, okay, well, if they trust these churches, then maybe this is somewhere that I could go on Easter. And if they choose our church, great. But we just want them to choose a church, which is great. Nancy and I really had a lot of heartburn about not having the gospel presentation or liturgy presented at these dinners. We were like, but my V3 training, my training at Northern, I learned that the gospel is presented. This is an invitation to the gospel, and it may not be right now. It could be an eventual invitation to the gospel, but it is a door that opens people into hearing the gospel. And so since our parish meals have started, we have seen fruit of the Lord working through these meals. We've had small group Bible studies born out of these meals. We've had people reach out to us and say, I don't go to church, but I know you're someone who prays, and I'm really desperate for prayer right now. Will you pray for me? We've had people reach out and ask us really hard theological questions that they don't understand and they're struggling with. We had an opportunity. So in San Antonio, obviously, we're somewhat near the border. We're a couple hours away from the border. So we have some pretty large processing facilities for immigrants and refugees. And a couple years ago, we had one of the processing facilities had a large influx of refugees and immigrants come, and they did not have enough room for everyone to sleep inside. And there was a cold front coming, which does not happen here very often. And so someone who works adjacent to the processing center reached out to Nancy and said, hey, we have hundreds of people who are going to have to sleep outside tonight, and they have no coats, no blankets, no sleeping bags. They have nothing. They have what's on their back, what they came with. Is there anything you can do to help? And Nancy sent out a message to our large group chat of everyone who comes to our dinners. And within 3 hours, she had 2 truckloads full of stuff that she delivered to that center. And I just believe, I'm going to get teared up. I just believe that that is the hands and the feet of the Lord working through this neighborhood. And because we have this parish community that trust us and trust each other, we were able to serve some people in a really desperate need. And so I have seen such fruit from something that some people could look at and say, y'all are just hosting dinner. You're not actually presenting the gospel. And so I would argue that it's an invitation to the gospel. And so it's given us an opportunity to have deeper conversations. So that's a little bit about what our parish looks like and what we've done. I would also just add really fast that something that's been very valuable for Nancy and I is to be flexible and to be willing to pivot and change if things aren't working or if things feel too hard. So just to be transparent, when we first started, we were meeting twice a month. And now we are a lot more sporadic. So in the fall, we might meet twice, but that's because Nancy hosts a giant Halloween party at her house every year on her driveway and invites the entire neighborhood to come. And so we kind of count that as a parish meal because it's the same. It's community happening in her front yard. And our neighborhood has multiple festivals. We have a Halloween or a fall festival and a Christmas festival. And so we participate in those. So we don't have as many parish dinners during the fall. And in the spring, we have a couple. And then in the summer, we'll host them at the pool. So we've gone to having 24 a year to probably having 8 a year. And but we do a lot of other things in between. And so, but that's something that felt doable for our core team. It felt doable for Nancy and I. And so I would encourage you, like, it's okay to change. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to change if things aren't working. So I think that's all Nancy and I have about this. So
Thank you both for sharing. It's wonderful. Really, really encouraging and inspiring, and significant work. I want to kick us off and just to remind everybody, maybe you jumped on at some point, didn't hear earlier, but if you have a question you'd like to ask to Nancy and Terri, feel free to put it in the chat box and we'll look at it after you send it in, but you can just drop it in there. Okay, so here's a question to kind of get us started off. What particular challenges have y'all faced individually or maybe together planting this neighborhood parish, this missional expression as women? What's been challenging for you guys, separately or together as you've engaged in that work as a woman?
I take that one, Terri. That's okay. So I do want to start with, so Terri and I are both, we are both moms. Like I said, we're co-vocational, and Terri has 3 children. I have 3 children. And so we kind of are going to speak to the struggles that we kind of feel as women, as moms, like leading this parish together. But I would just really encourage you guys, we'll talk about the challenges in that. But I do think that if you are pastoring as a single, as an empty nester, you're married with no kids, like, you will also face like challenges as well. And so I think for us, like, we kind of had to like sink our teeth in and like, okay, how are we going to do this in the roles that we are in? And I encourage you guys, if you are not in that, if that doesn't necessarily resonate with you, that you would kind of think through like how this would affect you as well. But for us, it's really balancing leadership with the ever changing demands of motherhood. For us, we're both moms, and like many moms, we kind of manage our family's calendars. And so, as well as our kids' schedules, our work schedules, and then also trying to lead our parish and also navigating that along with our core team who also have families as well. And so it has been challenging to, think about us when we're leading. Like, our capacity is always changing. It's like I have younger kids from preschool to fifth grade. Terri has middle school to high school. And so even now with our leadership together, we're kind of starting to find, there was a very short period that our kids were together in school. And now we almost feel like we're living in two different worlds. And so we want to be really faithful mothers and wives and participate in our community. And so sometimes it does feel a little overwhelming. When we sit down and we're trying to plan something and we look at our calendars, it's like such an undertaking. um, but I think we recognize that other women are facing this same struggle. And so when we are trying to think of the invitations we want to make, we're always super mindful of people's capacity and bandwidth because we're in the same boat as so many of these people. And a lot of the relationships, like I mentioned, are built from being involved in our schools. And we do live in a community where there's lots of little kids. So we kind of all feel like we're in the same boat. But with that, we have found that inviting women, Terri mentioned, are this text thread. And so that is how we do this invitation. We have, and it is literally a text thread made up of people that we know, people from our core team that met somebody at the park one day, and then they just threw their name in the group chat. It's people that we've met while walking our dogs. Like it is any neighbors that we find, and we invite them into this group chat, and it's all women. And what we've noticed is actually women are the ones that are kind of the ones that are navigating the calendar and the family schedule. And so for us, we're like, it's very easy to make an invitation and include women in that. Um, but also women kind of do tend to like lead the family in those things. And so it's just been interesting to see how that has worked. But you know, men may not experience that same burden that we feel of being mindful of people's schedules and people's bandwidth. That was something we definitely wanted to be mindful. Like, we don't want to be offended that people can't come to everything all the time because that's not what we can do. We don't have the capacity to do that. And we also want to acknowledge that, people are doing things in other ways that are also like serving their communities. Um, and so, I think for us, we're mindful of people's schedules. And so with that, we've kind of thought of ways to show hospitality in this is that we want to honor people's time. When we come together for a parish meal, it is a set 5 to 7 p.m. And we know that that's a really good sweet spot because it's when people got to eat. And so it's like, you know what? A way of showing hospitality is we will provide you a food. If that is going to remove one obstacle of participating in something, let us provide you a meal. And it is a full. We started off where we would kind of have like more robust meals, and then we realized the kids just want to eat peanut butter jelly sandwiches and Nutella sandwiches. So we will enlist our kids to make a slew of peanut butter and jelly and Nutella sandwiches, and we put them in Ziploc bags, and we do individual bags of chips. Like, we have broken this down to where it is like a well-oiled machine because this works for us. We want to be hospitable to the kids, and we provide like sandwiches and drinks for the adults. And also, Terri mentioned, we transitioned where we met. It started off where Terri and I would go back and forth between our two homes. And another thing I do feel like is important to mention, we do them in our front yard. We do not do them in our backyards. And we might have sometimes the food inside, but we make it a point that we want to be very visible. Like, we want this to be such an easy invitation that we're doing this in our front yard. So if this is very awkward for you to just at least walk in front and like make it to the sidewalk, hey, that's fine. Like, we're happy with that. But Terri and I live in very busy streets, and the kids would consume the streets. I mean, we had like little green guys with flags out there. We had dads that were like yelling cars like every 5 seconds. And we knew that it was becoming a little stressful for parents. And one parent was always dealing with one kid, and the other parent was, getting food for the other one. And so we thankfully had a family that lives in our neighborhood and that is on our core team that lives across the street from a cul-de-sac. And so they made it a point to ask everyone in their cul-de-sac, hey, we want to do this. We want to do this meal. Would it be okay if we do this in there? And everyone was totally fine with that. And then they came because it was within their front yard. And so now we have a safe place for kids to play. Parents feel safe or feel that their kids are safe and they can engage in conversations and actually go sit and have a meal. And so that's just like, we want to be mindful. And I think because we're women, we think about those things. We think about like, okay, how are the kids being taken care of? How are the parents able to handle the stress? Um, and so with that, another just struggle is, I think it's reaching men has been a little bit more challenging because we are the ones that are leading it. We have spouses for our spouses as well as on our core team that are incredibly supportive. I mean, they cheerlead us on more than anybody. But it's been a little bit harder to get them to initiate things. And so I think it's not because they're resisting it, but it's like maybe an unspoken hesitation on their part. And I think it's because they're respecting us, which we feel really grateful for, that they are respecting our leadership in this. Um, and they definitely don't want to overstep their boundaries. But I think, women are we've been led by men for many, many, many years. And it's just maybe there's a little bit more of an uncomfortableness of men being led by women. But with that being said, like even in our neighborhood is at the forefront. It would look like there are men that are leading things. But if you look behind the scenes, it is a slew of women who are running the show. Like they're the ones, someone in our core team, you should see her at an event running all of the food in the back. And she is a force to be reckoned with because and that's such an important part of hospitality is like providing people food. And so, I think that women do play a really important part in that. But even within our core team, we had someone who had an idea for something, and we were so quick to encourage him. We're like, "Yes, we love it. What can we do? How could we support you in this?" And so I think there is like a balance of being able to support one another. Um, but I think that we just haven't quite figured out how to engage the men in our neighborhood quite as well as we have with the women. And so, we'll get there, I think. But I think those are some of the challenges. Terri, I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that.
I think you've covered them all pretty well. So yeah.
Yeah, thank you for unpacking that. That's really insightful and helpful to hear about how that's worked out for you guys and shaken out. Look different in different seasons. I'm really struck by, as y'all are talking about, like the importance of kind of being flexible, being able to change and adapt, and being able just to like say like, oh, this thing that we thought would work, actually it's not working, or it's something is shaken out really different than how we thought it would. Let's try something different. Just the openness and the ability to flex and look for resources outside of yourselves. That's like another kind of way of sharing leadership and allowing others to play host, in a way, and creating more of the the community you're hoping to cultivate. So I love that. Okay, there's some really cool questions coming in. Thank you guys for sharing these. Here's maybe okay, here's a first question. Do you guys do things with the neighborhood group other than the meals? Are there any kind of other organized things? I know y'all are people, you two and your families and individuals in the group are involved in the school and in other kinds of things happening. But maybe in terms of other spaces that the parish organizes, are there any other kind of organized spaces that occur, or is it kind of mainly centered around the meals? Yeah.
I can answer that. So yes, the answer is yes. And I mean, it's very seasonal and it kind of depends again on our bandwidth and our capacity, but we have had women's nights where it was just the women. And we've done like, just hanging out on Nancy's front driveway and just all talking. And the reason why we started that was so that women could hang out without their kids and they could actually have more in-depth conversations. It's usually a smaller group. So it just lends itself to better and deeper conversations. So we've done that. We have had a couple of guys' nights where they'll all get together to watch a sports something, like they'll watch like a playoff game or something. I think they were watching the Spurs, I don't know. But they got together. And so it was kind of the same. They could hang out without kids. And what was fascinating about that is that it was a completely different group of men that went to the guys' night than that came from, that would come to the big neighborhood parish. And so that was very interesting to us that it was a lot of guys wouldn't come to the neighborhood thing, but they would go to the guys' night. We actually, one of our core team members, this is kind of what Nancy was talking about a minute ago. He had an idea of doing a neighborhood beer crawl and basically have different people sign up and to open their home, and they would get one type of beer and a snack, and they could pair up, and then we literally all walked through the neighborhood together and would hang out and try. And let me tell you, it was so fun. And I think we've done it 3 times now. I think we've done it 3 times, or maybe 4. And I mean, because you have so much one-on-one time to talk with people, and people are so excited. Like we have a very diverse neighborhood. And so we have a ton of military who've lived all over the world. And so they're like, I actually bought this when I lived in Germany, and I've been saving it for a special occasion, and I can't wait to share it with y'all. Like people, it really brought out a different type of like energy. And so, and then we would just walk and hang out. And so that has been really, really fun. We've ended it at at one of our core team members' houses, and they're always really hospitable, and it ends up going really late because it's just adults. And so that's been a really fun thing that we had. I mean, Nancy and I would never have envisioned that. And that just came out of the creativity of our group. And it's definitely brought in people who now will come to our neighborhood parish who had never done that. And now they're like, oh yeah, I'll go to that, So those are some things. I guess those are like kind of the big things that I can think of that we've done. And
it's interesting going back to like one of our struggles. So from this beer crawl, a group of guys, then we had gone to someone's house and he had workout equipment in his garage. And it's like, oh, you work out? I'll work out too. Maybe we should get together. Boom. Now they're like working out once a week together because they happen to see equipment. And it's like relationships that otherwise they wouldn't have seen. And so God just continuously has shown up like that, where it's like something small and he takes it and it like something else comes of it. But from some of the women there, it's through hanging out at our neighborhood pool, we started talking. There was a group of us that we started talking about Sabbath, and it then turned into, well, now we are doing studies, like the practicing the way studies from Mark, and we've done the Sabbath one and the generosity. And because of those studies, now someone in our community was like, because of this, let's get all of these parents with kids. We're going to go serve at this one, this food bank. And so now she has led that just because she has participated in the parish meals, then into one of these practices, and then actually wanted to go and do it and invite her children into it. And so we're seeing more and more stuff like that, where it's like, because of these gatherings, one by one, things are starting to build off of them.
Yeah, so cool. Love it. Something that was coming to my mind as y'all have been sharing is like, it seems to me that some of what's happening and that y'all are trying to do is to be a part of the fabric of the neighborhood rather than so often. This isn't true of every church, of course, but oftentimes churches kind of tend to maybe geographically be in a neighborhood, but they're kind of an ecosystem to themselves. And it's kind of like, if you can't kind of get in on the thing that we're doing or whatever it is, the Sunday service or whatever, then we're not really connected to you outside of that. And it seems like what y'all are up to is joining in what's already happening, participating in the fabric of the neighborhood, and also strengthening the fabric of the neighborhood through cultivating these spaces of hospitality and relationship and fun and connection, and all sorts of things you could never expect tend to kind of bubble up through that. It's really neat. Okay, here's another question. Well, someone asked if you could share your parish mission statement. And so maybe if you're willing, I know you read it earlier, maybe if you're willing, we could include that on the email that will go out afterwards, because I think some folks would love to see that. So we'll plan to do that.
Sure.
Here's a question. How would you encourage someone who maybe doesn't have a defined geographical neighborhood to start to create kind of the language they're using is neighborhood missionary community? But maybe, if another way to think about it is like, how do you, if you don't kind of have a very clear kind of defined neighborhood like y'all do, how might you encourage someone to begin to cultivate this hospitality kind of space in a different kind of space of their lives, maybe?
I would say start. I mean, this is taking language directly from V3. So I did not come up with this. This is V3 language, but start paying attention to where where you hang out a lot. So like where are you present? Is it a coffee shop? What is your porch? Like, where are you? Is it your workspace? Is it a restaurant that you go to? Are you part of a quilting bee? I don't know. I'm trying to think of like very, very unique things.
Yeah.
But there are places that you do live life. And so, and it could be your workplace. It could be a school. If you're a student, it could be your dorm. It could be, an apartment building. It doesn't have to be, a neighborhood. Or if you every morning go to the same gym and work out and you see the same people there every morning, well, that's a community that's ripe for hospitality. So whether that's, hey, y'all want to go to coffee once a week together after this, or I can get there if I can, or y'all want to come early and hang out. I don't know. There's like different things you can do and be creative in the places where you already are. And if you once you start, I think it's called a pathway in V3. Like you have very common pathways that you do every day or weekly, or you have a rhythm. And so maybe start paying attention and really like looking for those, and then asking God to show you how you can introduce some hospitality or an invitation into those spaces. So that would be my encouragement in that.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. Here's a question about kind of the frequency of the meal spaces and how that's looked different seasons. So the question is, do you think that starting with more frequent meetings, the meals, made it easier to kind of build the network and the community um, now that you've gone to more sporadic gatherings to maintain it? Or do you think it would have built the same depth if you started kind of with less consistency?
I can take that one, Terry. I think what was super helpful with having it more structured like that was, one, we were able to see the people that were really committed, and that's how we built our core team. It was when we saw the people that were committed, that were showing up every time, that were asking what they could help with, they were asking what they could bring. And so that, I think, having it so frequently, it made people feel, one, that we were doing something that was actually official. We weren't just kind of like,
Mm,
we'll see what happens. Like we were like, we were going to do it the first and the third Sunday of the month, and it was going to be from 5 to 7. And so I think that built, people just kind of expected, like, oh, okay, like when we would send out the text, hey, it's third Sunday, hope you guys can come to the meal. But it really helped in seeing the people that were committed to this. And that's when we started making the invitation of inviting people to our core team and asking them, hey, would you want to be a part of this? And I think it was good that they got to see it. And selfishly, I like to think that, God works in all things, and he worked in our exhaustion. And so I think, had we not pushed so hard to make this happen, if we would have been like, like we can't do it this month, but like we were like, no, it's a third Sunday, we have to make it happen. It made
mm,
us feel so desperate to do this with people. And man, I think back to those times when we would like almost dread it, to be completely honest, because we're like, it was so it was not so much work of like just the prep ahead of time, but then it was like we knew that it was just on us to make sure everyone was connected, talking to, and it was so many people and making sure that we were talking to everybody. And now to feel like, oh, okay, we can actually share this with a group of people. So yeah, I do think that it was I think God was able to work through that. But mainly for me, I think it was being able to see the people that were showing up consistently and that wanted to do this alongside us and helping build that team.
And I would say, I would agree. I actually do think it really helped at the beginning. And so
Mm.
I would encourage someone to stick it out, even if it's for 6 months, and say, okay, we're going to, and set your, I mean, maybe it's only once a month, and that's still very consistent. Once a month is very consistent. I think Nancy's gifting of having her apostle in her and her Enneagram 3 in her, I think that really, I think that pushes, because was definitely one of being like, I think we could skip this time and it would be okay. And I appreciate that Nancy was like, no, like, we said we're going to do this. Let's finish strong. Let's do it. And looking back, I'm so grateful that Nancy like pushed us forward, because I do think we have deep roots because of our consistency at the beginning. So for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. That's cool. What's been encouraging to you about people's receptivity to your leadership in the neighborhood?
I'll take that one, Nance. Okay, so a couple of things. First of all, we have a leader in our church, our pastor, who has empowered us to lead. So we don't feel like we have to check in or, or double, be like, is this okay? Like, we feel fully empowered to lead this neighborhood parish. And I think that's been really encouraging, because it shows confidence in us and our ability and what the Lord is doing in our neighborhood. And so that's been really encouraging. I can say that for
Mm.
sure. I think that before we started, I mean, this is San Antonio. There's lots of churches all over the place. We actually have two churches next door to each other, like on the main street into our neighborhood. It's like the elementary school and then two churches, right? And they're small churches, but they're right next to each other. Um, and so, but there's another church that's just around the corner, and that family, the pastor of that church, their family is very involved in our neighborhood. And they
Mm.
have a lot of congregants that live in our neighborhood. And so before Nancy and I launched our parishes, we actually went to dinner with the pastor and his wife, who are our friends. We're friends with them, but we wanted to explain to them what we were doing and vision, like, in our vision of because we didn't want them to think we were coming in and like we're trying to get everybody to come to our church like that, because that wasn't our vision at all, and we knew them and we knew their hearts, and we wanted to invite them to come along with us and do this with us. And they did. And they
Mm.
come to every single parish dinner that we have. They invite their congregants to come who live in our neighborhood. Those people invite their neighbors. And they understand what the purpose is. And so I would say they're sort of like a pseudo core team. Like, they don't help us with the planning, but when they're there, they're having intentional conversations. They are people of peace. They are people of faith, and they are just as present in the neighborhood as we are. And to me, their partnership with us and their coming alongside and saying, we love this and we want our neighborhood to reimagine what church can look like too, has been unbelievably encouraging to me. And I think to Nancy too. So for me, I think just their support has been awesome, because they don't feel threatened. And as a matter of fact, they are helping us and they love this and they think it's great. I would say, what else? What else, Nancy? Can you think of anything else that's been encouraging? Um,
um, Neighbors inviting other neighbors,
yeah.
like it is very few times that we are doing the majority of the inviting. It is so the norm that somebody would show up that we don't even know because somebody just invited them to this. And I feel really grateful that like our community really trusts us, that they would be willing to invite somebody who maybe
Mm.
doesn't even know what they're walking into. And the trust that we've built has just been so encouraging. And I think even like in times when, I feel like we are serving this community, but it's been crazy to see when we've needed something, how our community has stepped up for us. Is like, I mean, it just blows me out of the water when something shows up on my porch and I'm like, what in the world, and it's been, I feel like our community is taking care of us just as much because we've just built this trust with one another. And it's been really great to see.
Yeah, that's really encouraging. Uh, where do you go to continue to resource yourself, stay encouraged, learn about planting and kind of pastoring leadership in this, in many ways, what y'all are doing is a very kind of ancient form of church in many ways, but it's also kind of not traditional in our Western context over the last 150 years or whatever. So it feels kind of fresh and new in many ways too. How do you guys continue to resource yourself and learn, and what does that look like for y'all in this season?
It's a good
That's a good
question.
question.
Personally, I mean, this is a very like personal response, but being in seminary, I feel like I swim in this all the time, which is such a gift. It's truly a gift. Like I'm so grateful for the opportunity to study at Northern, because I feel like Northern is really good at this. They're really, really good at mission shaped church. I mean, that's, especially if you're doing a mission and theology degree, I feel like that's what a lot of our classes are geared towards. And so I feel very, very, very grateful for that opportunity. I know that's not an opportunity for everybody, or that's not, feasible for everyone. A little plug for Seminary Now, like they're great. That's a very affordable way to be equipped. And to kind of get information about this. V3 has really great things the cohort was fantastic. I feel like the reason why I really enjoyed the cohort is because I was doing it alongside other people who were also reimagining what church looks like in different ways. And so there was a lot of practice. We would have to really think through, I'd have to think through, like, what are we doing and how is this working? And I feel like that really helped me work through in my brain, like, okay, like this is the purpose, this is okay, oh, maybe we should rethink things. So I feel like working that out in a group with V3 was invaluable. I think there's lots of podcasts and books. I don't know, Nancy, do you have other things?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think for me, I so deeply and so passionately believe in what we're doing. And, Terri laughs at me sometimes, but I'm like, when I literally think about what God is able to do, I mean, just looking back at what we've done already and what I think forward to what God is going to continue to do, for me, I think there's no other option. We have to do this. And I'm not saying just we in Oak Meadow, but we just like as the church need to do this. And I feel like, and not in a negative way, but people are watching what we're doing and they're kind of curious about what this is going to end up to be. And for me, I feel so passionately about doing this well, and that we're going to be able to share what we're doing with others and encourage them to want to do this, because not because anything that Nancy Gaines or Terri Pease or anybody on our core team has done, but because we as like a body of believers who love so deeply the people that we live like within feet of, yards of, because we love them, like we want to do this in community with them. And so for me, I just get really excited about doing this well. And I want to do this well. And so I'm hearing the things that people are talking about. As I mentioned, talking with a group of people sitting by the pool, and we're talking about, we're exhausted and we want to talk about rest and Sabbath. Oh my gosh, I'm going to go find the resource that I can be able to study this alongside you, so that we can do this together as a community and influence others to want to live into this. Oh my gosh, our kids were around Christmas time. We're so overwhelmed with that. I'm like, you know what? Let's study generosity. How can we be an example as a body believers and go show this to others that are not, what it looks like to be generous. And so I mean, I wish we could go into details of like what the transformation we've even seen in members in our core team, and how we are blown away and encouraged by how they are leading in their own. We're one community, but it's like these little pockets and the influence that they are having. And so I just think like we're only a couple years in, and the shift that we've seen in people, and like I'm so excited to continue to share this, and other people getting really jazzed about doing this on their, I'm already thinking in terms of like my kids are seeing this. My kids are 5, 8, and 10. And I'm like, my daughter is going to be in her dorm room and she's going to want to bring, other college kids to her dorm to eat ramen and whatever junk they can find. And like, she's going to show hospitality in her college dorm because that's what she's grown up with. And that to me, I just think like on a larger scale, what we're doing is in this tiny little corner of San Antonio, Texas. But like the more and more that we have conversations like this, like people are going to want to do this. Like this feels really good. And it is like loving people in such an easy way. And just, I just believe that God's going to do something big with this. And this is not going to be, this will not be out of the ordinary anymore, is my hope and prayer.
Yes. Well, we are so encouraged by having y'all on to share your story and hear your heart and catch a bit of your energy and passion and commitment. It's incredible. Thank you so much for being here. We're going to wrap up our time just to honor everyone's time. But just a reminder for everybody, this is sponsored by V3 and the V3 cohorts in particular. The next one starts in September. So a few months. If you're interested in learning more about V3 and the cohorts, you can go to the website, which is the v3movement.org. You're going to get an email later with a replay of this webinar and a link to the cohorts. Thank you so much, Nancy and Terri, for being here, and we'll see you later on.